All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Dan Griffin. I'm with Klevu, and we're a product discovery suite. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, with some industry experts from system integrators and agencies in the Americas. What we want to do is tear down kind of what we saw, what clients experienced, and the trends that we see in the future. I'm going to stay largely out of the way of these three folks. They're industry experts. They understand commerce. They're interacting with merchants all the time. First, I want to introduce Darin Lynch, and then we'll also have Hasan, Elkomey, and Doug Hollinger come in and kind of turn this into a panel. Darin, if you could maybe start us off and maybe talk about personal experience on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and what did you see or your family see, and then how did that extend into your clients?
I'm Darin Lynch, founder and CEO of Titan. We're an SI, as we say in the industry, so an e-commerce agency. I started the company back in 2004, so we've been around 17 years, which we're a bit of a dinosaur, right, in the e-commerce space. And I'm personally a dinosaur. My first e-commerce project was in 1997. So anyway, that's enough of a bio. Let's jump into Black Friday, Cyber Monday, so to speak. I think that it's been an interesting evolution over the years in general, right? Like Black Friday's been a thing for a long time. Cyber Monday started to emerge a while ago now too, and COVID drove a ton of change in e-commerce, including driving that into Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So our retailers, our merchants, by and large, all had good Black Friday, Cyber Mondays. Some of them had better than others. Some of them didn't meet their expectations, but still met the expectations we were actually suggesting, right? 2020 was an exception of a year in almost every way, good and bad, right? But so much demand was pulled forward into 2020 that a lot of tech and SI companies in our space had great years. A lot of merchants had great years. A lot of categories that had not yet really enjoyed much e-commerce online success began to enjoy that sort of success. That 2020 was an incredible year, and 2021 sort of flattened out in some regards for some people. We had one merchant, I'll name check them, darn tough. They do made in the USA socks. They had a great Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because they didn't have supply chain issues. They were up, I'm looking at my numbers, make sure I have it right here, 126% from last year. So, I think some verticals and some merchants who could lean in on driving acquisition, conversion, retention, particularly if they didn't suffer supply chain risk, had a good year.
And we saw something similar where we saw things like luxury brands and personal brands continue to go up, but we saw things like beauty and healthcare with less volume. And I don't know if that was largely because of 2020 versus 21 in the sense of everyone was at home in 2020. So you were taking care of things and you probably took care of yourself. And then now we're exiting out into the world, and we have been for a little while. And there's a little bit of uncertainty, but the luxury brands have definitely picked up as people seem to be interacting. I'm curious, Hasan, what was it like at Redstage for your merchants?
Yeah, so I think, and Darin touched on it briefly. I mean, the supply chain has screwed up everything, right? Cost and inventory, and shipping has gotten better. It still stinks, but at the end of the day, our customers are doing better this year than they were last year. A lot of which had to do with the budgeting and the planning and the systems and the talent around it that was, under a lot of stress last year. Things have changed this year because we were able to plan ahead. The budgets for 2021 have been planned in 2020, and a lot of it has been focused around online revenue drivers. We foresee 2022 being even better, especially on the B2B side, because primarily what we do is on the B2B side. Supply chain issues are actually allowing folks to take a step or two back and really reevaluate what they're doing internally, the warehousing, the shipping, the technology, the decluttering of that as well. The decluttering of systems and products that they have in place, the decluttering of processes that they've got. And just because it's the way we've been doing it for 10 and 20 years, or the only way we know how to do it, doesn't mean it's the right way. So customers have been looking to us for more of that consultative approach. We know best. What do we need to do, rather than going to the likes of the platform because they're going to sell them on their platform. So we've been able to expand specifically around B2B, leveraging B2C to make things better on the B2B side, really digging into the supply chain component, and customers have been more receptive than ever, because e-commerce and what we do is no longer a nice to have, right? It's their utilities, right? It's their food and water, before even paying their lights and their water and food. I mean, this is the lifeline, the bloodline for the entire company. So I believe we're in a good place, and it's not slowing down. If anything, I mean, Q4 is usually quiet, right, Darin and Doug? It's usually quiet. We've never been busier. Q3 is insane, but Q4, I've never seen it like this in my years in this industry. I believe Q1 is going to be just maybe not as busy, but it'll still be busier than what it was last year and the year before, obviously, considering the budgets that have opened up. We've got customers who are saying we got to put this budget somewhere so that we get more money next year. So we're going to be parking some stuff with you guys so that we can plan accordingly, which has always been, the name of the game when it gets into enterprise, but even more so now than ever, because they don't want to lose it, and they need to have more budgets around, online revenue driving technology around e-commerce specifically, and the products that touch it.
Awesome. Thanks, Hasan. Doug, kind of to follow on to what Hasan was talking about, could you touch a little bit on kind of how tech performed? Because we've talked about the supply chain and the impact that it has just globally on commerce in general. And then Darin mentioned an America's type only organization that was able to really control some of those variables. Can you touch on kind of how did tech perform and maybe the benefits that your clients saw?
You talk about tech from the solution side?
Yeah, technology from a solution side, and what it really means, because I don't think everyone understands that tech kind of underpins it, but then there's still the strategy that your three organizations deploy over the top of technology to deliver.
Well, like Darin mentioned, I'm a dinosaur too. I've been in this business since about 99, 2000, and so you go through all these waves of technology, and full disclosure, I mean, BBA is pretty much a Shopify shop, right? And we work a lot with D2C brands and folks that are using more of I would say the latest wave of e-com technologies, right? And more of a plug and play, all that good stuff. So one of the things that I've seen in the last, just by using some of these tools, is there's just, the tools are more in the background, and I think there is a little more dependency, right? There's less fear that everything's going to crash on over the weekend, right? And your servers go out and all that because of cloud-based technologies, et cetera, and just more robust and simpler systems in some cases. So again, I'm not dealing with a lot of B2B clients, a lot of D2C and that kind of thing, but I think that the tech performed very well. We had no hiccups, right? Again, I was thinking like 5 years ago, it was just stress all the time, and people did really well. I think, so again, the nice thing is the tech has kind of got to where it's not an afterthought, but it's just sort of assumed it'll work. And again, if you put it in place and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you can kind of depend on it and then focus on business issues. So I find that really a nice thing to see. So yeah, I think it's been really nice. And then the ability to just track what's happening just gets better and better as well, right? So the data that's available through the entire sales funnel is really important. A lot of our clients as well, they're leveraging social channels and this kind of social commerce integration and some of those platforms. So again, I think the undergirdings of the businesses on a digital and technical side, I think is stronger than ever and gives people a lot more flexibility to focus on, again, what's my customer doing? What do I need to do in terms of supply chain and all those other issues? And it's less about technical worries. As well as just simple things like business teams be able to make updates to the website instead of having to go through IT and all those kind of things.
Did your merchants see the same type of results that Darin and Hasan had talked about? And to be fair, Darin and Hasan are talking about it from, really two different types of businesses. I'm curious how it was with BDA.
Yeah. So what we saw, and again, I had this conversation with our data lead, right? Some of the businesses were flat to a little lower than last year, but last year was a huge aberration, right? It was an explosion of online shopping for D2C brands. And so when we look at 2019, everybody is kicking ass, right? From 2019, from last year, they maybe couldn't, overcome their own percentage performances. I would say revenue's up, but they may not see the hyper growth they did before. So what we saw in the D2C space, we do a lot of apparel, we do subscription type businesses, a lot of CPG brands. What's interesting is the sessions decreased. I would say about 10% if you look at the entire portfolio of our clients year over year from just last year. Revenue though was flat, so it didn't track down. That's because AOV was really strong this year. So I found that really fascinating that maybe people weren't as many sessions, but when they were buying more. And in general, I would say the highest performing stuff was really kind of in that outdoor sports fitness still category. But and we talked about this, I think even before the call, because we're elongating, it's no longer so much Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It's kind of like October, November. And we've trained, all of us, I think, have trained consumers and buyers that there are shipping problems, there are supply problems. People know this that are buying. And so, we started sales earlier. It wasn't all concentrated on the weekend. The sales went longer. I would say the promos weren't as rich sometimes as in the past. But again, we've seen, it's almost like we got to look more at the October, November numbers really than just Black Friday anymore. It's kind of morphing.
I'm so happy you brought that up, and I'm going to kind of call an audible to what we had talked about from a discussion perspective, because at Klevu we saw search volume went up, product discovery, people looking for things went up, but the actual conversions went down. And I'm kind of, our speculation internally is what you talked on, Doug, and I think it's going to be an interesting set of points here, because Hasan's going to focus a little bit on the B2B side and their clients, and then Darin and Doug, you guys will talk a little bit more about the D2C or those B2C brands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, Shopify yesterday shared that I think it was 23% year over year growth in general to their entire client base, which is pretty significant. I'd love to let's dive right into kind of this elongated experience that we're all training buyers to go through, where Black Friday, Cyber Monday is no longer just go line up at a store on Friday at 4 a.m. so I can get in and get the best deal. But you're educating in October and November to this maybe discount or intelligent buying experience that then draws almost all the way through into the holiday season. And so, Hasan, I want to start with you, because when we talk about B2B, it's a different type of customer. Can you share what it's like in the B2B space specifically, elongating a sales cycle? Because that's pretty common anyway, but what does that mean in this longer Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but really holiday buying season?
I think people tend to forget that these B2B brands also have B2C. So there are issues that are affecting both areas, right? From a manufacturing standpoint, costs have gone up, right? What are we going to do now? As let's say Colgate, right? Our prices have gone up because of supply chain and the supply and demand and inventory, and now we got to go tell Target and Walgreens, sorry guys, toothpaste has gone up. We have to increase your pricing. But they also have their e-commerce for direct to consumers as well. So there's a fine line in place not to upset the big box stores that are buying from them, but also their customers and the direct to consumer outlet. And it's been affected drastically. Everything's gone up. So other folks, like similar to that company you talked about, Darin, where they had the inventory in place and they're good to go. They've increased their pricing as well, because it's just, why not, right? The competitors have increased their pricing. Why the heck shouldn't I? We've got a customer who is in, they put together cocktail kits, and they had inventory as far as the eye can see. They saw something coming and they over-purchased, and it was a good bet for them. But all their competitors have increased their pricing by 20, 30%. So they said, well, why the hell not? They've increased their pricing as well. They purchased on the B2B side early enough, and they made up for it. Pricing has gone up, supply chain issues, and they've increased their pricing. They've also used it in a sense of saying, we don't know what the heck is coming. The B2B customers that we've got with their clientele, and saying we don't know what's coming, but we know that increases are going to come. So if you want to be locked in now, you need to buy now to lock in these pricing. So they're using these challenges that they know are in place and are coming to increase sales, to get people to buy now so that they plan accordingly, so that they know what's to come. So they're using the pandemic to their advantage in the supply chain challenges on the B2B side to increase, revenue and sales. And maybe specifically around particular products that they typically don't move. Well, maybe we can, move some of the stuff that's been sitting on the shelf for, God knows how long. So there's, it's a bittersweet essentially, right? Where they've got these challenges in place, but they're using it to their advantage in certain areas from the B2B component. And they're, leveraging it on the B2C side as well.
I think just to chime in on that a little bit with echoing a comment, I think that some of the winners in e-commerce right now in general, not even specific to just Black Friday, Cyber Monday, especially because that's being dispersed, as you mentioned, are those that best manage their supply chain. And I think that's true in B2B and B2C, right? And whether that's because you have the good fortune of having USA sourced products, or if you have the right people, process, and systems to manage supply chain well, those are the companies that I think are largely comprising those that are performing the best in e-commerce, right? Like, it's not just that. You have to have the right site capabilities, you have to have the right promotions, all of that sort of stuff still matters. But if you're really strong there, these supply chain problems that have emerged over the last year negate almost all of that. And so I think there's a direct correlation between supply chain performance and your online success.
And do you guys think that, and maybe Doug, you can start here. Do you guys think that we learned from, and we all went, as COVID started, right? And we went into lockdown, people started buying online, and we mentioned sporting goods, outdoor goods, things like that, where, like, I happen to live in Florida. You couldn't find a kayak to save your life. If you were trying to mountain bike, you couldn't find a mountain bike to save your life. So, I'm just curious, like, did smart companies learn from that and really bake that into their strategy as they saw it from last year into this year?
I think what we've seen, is a lot of companies are building more flexibility into every part of their business, staffing, supply chain, marketing, right? Because I think one of the big lessons was you get caught off guard by something and your model has some pinch points. The whole thing comes down, like Darin was saying, you have too many points of failure. So a lot of it is just, how can I build flexibility into my strategy to both kind of, to Hasan's point, take advantage of things that might be in the market or in my competitive space, but also to protect myself. And so I think you're seeing this behavior too, where we have some clients also were just too dependent on the D2C online channel. So they started diversifying themselves, going into retail or maybe opening their own stores, and vice versa, right? People that were we have a couple clients that were only selling through big box, and they had neglected the digital channel. Of course, they got caught flat-footed last year, and so they put in major investment. So I think we're seeing a lot of the companies that are just, they're not planning, they're not doing 2-year plans, right? They're kind of planning more short-term, and they're trying to shore up the parts of their business where they're exposed. And I think that comes in all over the place, because as we've kind of joked about, there's been, people quitting and changing jobs. We've got people working from home or moving all over the country, maybe that are taking advantage of remote work. There's just all kinds of behavioral things going on in our economy that it's hard to predict. And so some of the stuff we're seeing too, where I think you're seeing a lot of search volume early, but then people are shopping in store more than last year. And I think so the companies have kind of learned by burning their hand on the stove last year a little bit. I don't want to get caught like that. I'm gonna not run out of stuff. I'm not gonna overcommit, but I'm gonna build some redundancies and some safety valves into my business.
I'm not sure which one of you can best kind of address this, and maybe Hasan, we can start with you because you have that unique view, more so with your client base that starts B2B, but they also have the direct arm or the B2C arm to this, and it's kind of a fine point on what Doug was just talking about there. And I'm just, as a not savvy person to supply chain and its detail and how it affects the commerce space, but knowing that I'm walking into stores and some shelves are empty, but then I walk into other stores and they've done a good job prepping, for something like this. How much at play was inventory availability into like all of your clients' decisions on how to go to market for this buying time? And did it impact their ability to digitally fulfill versus do we see folks gravitating toward these stores, these brick and mortar stores to actually purchase because it's there now? And I'm just curious, in general, how that's affected kind of these bigger plans and strategies for this buying time.
Yeah, good question. And to Doug, you nailed it, right? I mean, 2 years is too long, right? That's a lifetime nowadays. People are planning in small pieces now. I mean, quarterly, even monthly, right? Because 2 years is far too long. 1 year is far too long. I mean, it's exponential. The direction we're headed. And we're hearing and seeing this every day. It's affecting staffing as well because of it. There's consolidations and M&As and a lot of different things that are affecting staffing. For us in this industry, we're all feeling it, but it's the same thing with our customers. They're feeling it as well. So they're looking to lean on us for direction, consultative approach, and kind of outsourcing some of the stuff that they typically would do internally because it's unpredictable. It's affecting inventory and fulfillment. They're looking to 3PLs and other partners to help on that side. Because it's just unpredictable. And using the pandemic as an excuse for these B2B brands to go to B2C is what they were looking for. They were afraid of, scaring away their buyers, right? Like not Amazon, Walmart, well, these guys are going to be upset with us. We can't do this. We don't have a choice now, right? I mean, this was the time to do it. To say, look, guys, we got to do it. We have to invest here. We have no choice. Our customers, and I mean, we're going to work out these terms for you guys and inventory and products. You have that fully covered for you. You're going to be receiving what you need to. You're going to be getting your concessions, your rebates, a dirty word in manufacturing and distribution. But it's a world I came from. I came from manufacturing and distribution, and it was always treading lightly. How do we go about this? What do we do? We can't upset, these big dinosaurs who are going to, go to the competition if we don't do right by them. So it was on the inventory front as well. And I'm glad you brought this up, Dan. We're seeing the B2B brands invest on the inventory side with their buyers, with their distributors, to leverage their spaces, to leverage their reach, to leverage buying power now so that we can help work on the pricing because everything's gone up. We work with an agriculture company specific around spices and coffee beans and nuts. And I mean, $40 billion company, everything's gone up, right? And it's gone up for a few reasons. They had to shut things down, right? They couldn't farm or put things in place. They didn't have the people, their regulations and rules in place. And it increased everything across the board for them. But they had to partner up with their buyers, with their distributors, with their vendors, with their competitors even, in order to be able to combat what we're dealing with around inventory and supply chain challenges. I'm hoping that we learn from this and plan a little bit more accordingly for 2022. I think pricing will continue to go up for the first half of the year. before tapering off. But I don't see it slowing down for the first quarter or two of 2022.
Hey, Dan, do you mind if I chime in real quickly? Because I think Hasan made a point that for our listeners, it's really important for them to hear. And that is that channel conflict is really not that big of a conflict anymore.
Yep.
I remember in the early days, that was the one of, if not the biggest concern that a lot of merchants, whether they were B2B or B2C, mentioned, right? Just tremendous hesitation around channel conflict. I hear mention of channel conflict these days about as frequently as I hear people looking for a VCR. It's not an issue anymore. And I think it's still a consideration, right? How do you manage your relationships? That is certainly something to take into account. But if you're hesitant to start to offer your products online because of channel conflict, you are absolutely going to miss opportunity, because one of your competitors will realize they don't need to be hesitant and they'll do it.
Yeah, I would support all of that. And then one thing I would just say, the whole chain we're talking about too goes to distribution fulfillment, right? There's also changes there that are happening because we have had clients as well. It's not just inventory, it's that inventory sitting in one place, or it's right, or you don't have any stores to distribute. We have a lot of buyer behavior now, which is, I want it locally, I want it faster, I want it again, because I'm worried about it getting here on time. So all of this stuff goes together. You got to look at the whole thing and your customer service, all of that stuff. So again, this goes to Darin's point, which is channel conflict. Use every channel and think about it holistically. Don't get pigeoned into I'm this company or that company. You've got to be able to pivot and meet your customers where they are, because their behavior is changing very rapidly. I mean, almost month to month. And so you got to be able to have that flexibility.
We touched on this in terms of, looking shorter, planning shorter, but then understanding that the experience is longer, right? In terms of our thoughts on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which is really just a moment in time. Your companies are helping, sellers understand this is really more of a longer experience. And there's a lot of things, which we touched on today, that go into making that a really good customer experience. Maybe the last thing that we touch on today is, what would your guidance be like? What's next in terms of, we had the kind of big bang moment of, hey, here are our discounts, here's Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but we know this continues. Like, what happens next for brands to be successful, not just into, and up into the holiday season, knowing my deadline to buy is coming like really soon with shipping issues, but into January, February to start thinking about that next retail experience?
Don't get distracted with a shiny new object, because at the end of the day, you need to remain hyper-focused, right? This is what we need to start investing in, or continue to invest in, to expand upon. I can't tell you how often we have customers that come in and say, well, I'm thinking about this thing here, we really should look into that. Like, but you don't need this stuff. You don't need to throw all this stuff at it. Well, we might need a PIM, but you have 20 products. Like, I mean, and
they're all simple.
Yeah, and they're all in English. I mean, it's just like, silly, small little things, and I have to help, bring them down to reality. Look, there's plenty else to do here around your system and the support to go with it. Let's dig into your supply chain and the systems there, your warehouse management system, your trucks, right? I mean, where are they? How are you tracking things? So things there that are more, imperative. Your distribution network, fulfillment, inventory, all of these things, rather than, just being distracted and looking to try to bring in something that you're going to have to declutter anyway. You're throwing money in places you shouldn't. So I think it's important for the year ahead that we stay hyper-focused and we don't get distracted with a shiny new object that will only throw a wrench in things. I think at the end of the day, they need to rely on the likes of Doug, Darin, and Redstage, our team members, to really consult and to shepherd them as opposed to continuously, going to like the likes of Salesforce and Microsoft and Adobe and saying, well, what should I do? Well, they're going to tell you our product, right? If they're listening to this, that I'm going to get some shit for it, I'm sure. But you got to trust in your agencies. You got to trust in your partners. They're here to work for you, not for the platforms. They're here to consult you. They're not here to just sell you something to sell you something. If it's going to work and we're going to be successful here, whether it be product A, B, or C, then you're going to stick with me, right, for the long haul, to get you through this.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Hasan. I think it's that flexibility we were talking about has to be everywhere. So one thing I think as we're seeing companies morph, it used to be there was this kind of division, right? Marketing's over here, sales over here, or I've got my store people and my digital people or my IT people. And you really have to have a more integrated approach. And you have to have all your ways of going to market kind of aligned. So it can no longer be where you're like in the old days, right? You had kind of like the digital stuff. I don't know where to park it. Well, it needs to be part of your organization, whether you're using people like us or you're going to bring that in-house. And again, it's business now. We've talked for a long time, like e-commerce is going to be calm, right? E-commerce is commerce. Well, that's here. Commerce is commerce, period. And you have to have expertise, right? You need people that know digital marketing and all of that stuff, depending on your brand. You need people that know operations. But they've got to work together and they've got to be enabled to make decisions that are smarter on the business on that shorter time frame. Be more dynamic as a business and drive the conversation. Don't get driven all the time. So I think this idea of in the past of like, well, we're going to bolt this on, we're going to dip our toe in the water, we're going to experiment. You just know you have to go in and commit and then be smart around moving resources, moving people, but having the right brains at the table, having the right voices at the table, and make decisions holistically. It can't be anymore where like, this part of the organization wags the entire dog. No, all of it needs to go together. And I think that's the only way to get to where this market's going is the companies that are enabling smart people to do the right thing in concert together, looking at the whole business, are going to win.
Well, I can wrap us up, Dan. I think that what I would say share as some advice for merchants going forward is fortune favors the brave. And I think that the companies that have done the best in general, whether we're talking commerce, Doug, I totally agree with your comment, right? We're not really e-commerce anymore, we're commerce. And we have been talking about that inside the industry, inside baseball for a while. But I think setting aside a few industries and verticals that were absolutely cratered because of COVID, the businesses that have done well in the last year and a half are those that were confident in investing in their business and trying to grow it and push it forward, right? And so I think fortune favors the brave, whether that's investing in a PIM if it is the right thing for you, or realizing that, hey, our tech stack's in good shape. Let's invest in our supply chain, or let's invest in hiring some talent because we don't have enough talent inside our four walls, even if they're virtual, to drive our e-commerce channel, our commerce channel like we should, right? And so I think what I would suggest to merchants, whether they're B2B or B2C or D2C, is fortune favors the brave. And if you have built a good business and you're confident in you and your team, invest in that and keep growing your business.
Wow, those are awesome points, guys. I appreciate you sharing them all. And so to wrap us up here, first and foremost, Darin, Hasan, Doug, thank you guys so much for offering this advice. I'm going to round us out with this. I've been in MarTech commerce supply chain, whether it be leading professional services organizations or in go-to-market for almost 20 years. And what I've noticed is something that, Hasan, you started to touch on, and both Doug and Darin leaned into. Don't buy into the category creation that analysts want you to think about in terms of just tech solving your problem. This is a multi-spoke approach where when you have folks like Darin, Hasan, and Doug in their teams who talk to customers like you and a dozen others over the course of a year that might be like you or in just tangential or that next bubble over industry, like that's the goodness, because you don't have to be afraid to make a mistake because these teams are already seeing it and they're kind of sitting in this control tower, understanding I don't need to go buy a pick your category creation software because I actually can solve my current problem here. So I just want to say that because the really smart companies that we see are leaning into, whether it's agencies or system integrators that they bring in, or they've invested in it internally, when they trust their people. To your point, Darin, like, be brave, but trust the people that you've brought to the table to help you be brave. I think is massively important, and you always end up winning with really smart problem solvers, not necessarily smartly recommended solutions. So,
Right.
and that's coming from a tech person, right? Like I live and
Well,
breathe
that goes
tech.
into though that giving your people ability to fail, but fail small and learn quickly, right? If you do that and you're not in these big 2-year projects where you're migrating your ERP and blah blah. I mean, like, right? Do it where you let people do this and try things in the market, and get feedback, and then pivot. Versus that central holding on the reins so much, I think is key, and that includes, again, selfishly for us, working with people like us that we can bring that perspective to you.
That's awesome. Well, fellas, thank you guys so much. Have a great, rest of this week. We're recording this on a Friday, but wherever you happen to be, listening to this, have a great rest of the week. Hope everybody enjoys their holiday season. And
Go
thanks again
Hawkeyes! Go Hawkeyes! By the way, in the Big Ten championship tomorrow.
Oh my gosh! Shameless plug is the Buckeye guy over here is the moderator.
In full disclosure, I'm glad we're not playing you.
Excellent, guys. Thanks. Hey, have a great one.